Okay, so my talk this week is on discovery learning with technology. So, the topic for my blogs over the last few weeks has just been discovery learning, which is generally learning through exploring and not following set steps that you have to take for the child to find their own way and figure out things on their own instead of being told, spoon-fed what they need to do and how they need to do it. So, my last blog spoke about difference between guided discovery learning and pure discovery learning, because a lot of research has found guided is obviously better because they get some support and they're not just left to do whatever they want to do, and they're given some support but they're still discovering it for themselves and not just doing exactly what the teacher tells them. So obviously technology is advancing and there's loads of ways that you can learn with technology now, so through tablets, computers, interactive whiteboards, online games, laptops. A lot of schools now have a lot of technology within them, and research shows that technology improves learning and discovery learning improves learning, so why not put the two together to make a more effective learning? So one of the biggest problems with discovery learning is cognitive load, which is basically when you don't know anything about something but you're told just to go figure it out on your own, and you're like, whoa, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this. They found, some research, John and Julian, whatever his name is, they found that if you use computers and technology, it tends to reduce the cognitive load felt, because you can use the internet and other resources to find out the answers for you. So you're still discovering it on your own without the teacher just standing there telling you how to do it, but it's obviously easier to do it with the help of Google and YouTube instead of just trying to figure it out on your own. So there's also a lot of debate about how much support and guidance is needed, especially with using technology, because you don't want to tell them exactly how to get somewhere, and this is the steps you need to do, this, and this to make this chart and do this, because then the child's not really learning anything. So research has suggested there's 3 types of support that's needed. So you have interpretive support, which is what they need to do, so students need to understand the end of the thing, what they need to have created at the end. So maybe some examples, and to be this is a good example of what needs to be made at the end of this lesson, or you need to know this amount of information, it needs to be presented this way. So they know what they need to aim for in the end. So experimental support, so to know they're on the right track, but if the teacher not to come over and just be no, you're doing it wrong, change everything, but to just give them little tips about how to keep them on the right track and stop them from just doing it completely wrong and wasting a whole lesson doing something that's not actually helping their learning. And also reflective support, so the children need to understand what they've learned and the steps they've gone through to do this, so that it's not just by chance and they're not going to be able to replicate this learning style the next time they come to do the same task. So you need to make sure that the child is actually learning and they understand how they've got to the place they have got to. So they need some support with that, just to make sure that everyone knows what they're doing. So the research suggests that if you follow these 3 steps, it makes learning more effective, but there needs to be a balance between giving too much support and spoon-feeding the child and them exploring and figure it out themselves. So it's obviously difficult for the teacher to kind of gauge how much support they need, because it changes per child as well, because some children might need more support than others, but they need to do that individually instead of just standing at the front of the class and being this, and this, and this, and this is how you get to the end of today's lesson. Now just go do exactly what I've told you, because then the child isn't really learning. Some more research on discovery learning and technology in general has found that giving the child the freedom to explore the technology that they're going to use, so maybe at the start of the lesson just having 10 minutes to play around with the tablets or the laptops to figure out how it all works, actually leads to them learning the material quicker and using it quicker, and they have greater intuition, because after when you get a new phone, the first thing you do is you just sit and play around with it and figure out how to do the cool stuff quickly, so then they can then use that at a later date with their learning. And obviously this improves their problem solving skills, because they can learn the quickest ways to get to the end result that they need, so that's also good. But then there's also been 5 key problems really to implementing technology in the classroom with discovery learning. So the first has been the lack of student motivation. So if a student isn't motivated to do this and they don't want to sit and figure out how to do stuff on their own, then it's difficult for teachers to get them motivated and to get them to do this, because obviously discovering learning won't work if you don't want to do it, because you won't really be discovering anything, you won't be learning in the end. So the accessibility of inquiry techniques really relates to like the teachers. So if the teachers aren't that knowledgeable about what they're teaching and they only know one set route, and the students find different routes, they might interrupt them and be like, oh, you're doing it wrong. Whereas if they would have like researched it further beforehand, they would have found that the students are actually doing it right, they're just doing it like a longer way around, but towards the end of the process they might find like a better way that they could have done it themselves, which is more helpful for the students to have gone through that process than the teachers to have just cut them off to begin with. A lack of students' background knowledge, so this is again referring to the cognitive load, but then there has been quite a few different pieces of research that has found that using technology reduces the cognitive load, so it kind of balances that out a bit. But maybe like initially, before you set like students loose with loads of technology, teach them like the basics of how to use it and how to use the software, then they'll feel like they have more of the skills to like go and figure out how to do like everything by themselves. And another problem is activity management by teachers. So if you have 30 kids all in a classroom and they each have like a laptop and they're each doing different things and doing it their own way, it's a bit difficult for the teacher to oversee everything and be able to go around and help each child when they can be all at different stages and doing it different ways and things. So puts more pressure on the teacher a bit more. And the practical constraints as well, so obviously the school not being able to afford to get all the technology, and so basically if your classroom doesn't have interactive whiteboards and stuff, obviously you can't plan lessons with it. And if your school doesn't have enough like laptops for all the children, then obviously you can't really use discovery learning with technology. But to conclude, there are positive and negatives to discovery learning with technology. So one of the main things being that technology opens up a lot more for discovery learning and you can do a lot more with it. But it can be quite difficult to keep students on track and stop them procrastinating, like going on Facebook and stuff. If you have access to the internet, obviously we all do it. Last year we had research skills seminars. As soon as you load up your laptop, you go check Facebook and stuff, and you're not really engaging that much in the lesson. And there's also the big issue of funding, whether schools can afford to buy the technology. But overall, I think that discovery learning should be implemented with technology because it widens it up, and it's obviously more effective for the students if they like work out what they need to do on their own instead of just being told everything that they need to do. But I think it'd be more effective for like the older years in schooling rather than like 4-year-olds, because although 4-year-olds are quite clever with technology, they can find their way around tablets. I don't think working with computers will help them too much because they'll need more support than like discovery learning can really give them. They'll need more like adult supervision and stuff, especially if you have a big class of like 4-year-olds. Or with like technology, they might break it, they need like more support and stuff. But yeah, any questions? You can go.
Could you sort of like replace the IT lessons instead of doing that with technology throughout every subject, you think, and then we've got that extra sort of hour or whatever a week, to spread out between the different classes using technology?
You could.
Instead of just putting everyone in a classroom with computers for an hour a week, just sort of say.
Yeah, I think that would be more helpful if it was integrated throughout education instead of just purely in IT lessons, but then you could also use the IT lessons to teach the basic skills needed in all the other lessons. So maybe have a few IT lessons at the start of the year, and then they can use it like more wisely for other things as well to make learning like more effective.
Over the last few years, technology has been booming.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a lot of interactive technology already inside classrooms.
Yeah.
Why do you think that this hasn't taken on this kind of discovery learning that really we do have the capabilities for in the schools? It just isn't happening.
I think teachers are more inclined to more spoon feed the children and tell them this is what you need to do just in case that they teachers like to think that their teaching is effective, so they like to know that by the end of this class they all have created this nice big like say graph or something, whereas maybe it would be more helpful for the students to have figured it out on their own because they would have learnt more during that process. Even if they didn't get the whole finished result, they still would have learnt more from the steps. So I think I think it's hard for teachers to gauge like how much like support they need to give. I think often teachers give too much support and give like too much guidance, so that the students tend to learn less because they're already told exactly what they need to do, so they're not really learning in the way. Yeah.
With interactive whiteboards,
Yeah.
does it tend to be a teacher that's actually interacting with the and
Yeah.
the students like passively observing still?
Yeah, like the aim of like discovery learning would be for the students to use the interactive like in groups. So if there was like one in a class, then maybe like a group of 6 students, but like as you say in classrooms now, it is just the teacher like, oh look what I can do on the whiteboard, and that's not really the students learning, and that's not discovery learning either, because the students aren't using the technology and they aren't learning from it. But that's one of the things that needs to change.
In using discovery learning, how can the teachers actually account for their teaching? How can they say, oh well, they've learnt this, this and this? 'Cause that's an important thing, especially sort of in sort of like primary and early secondary school. They've got to say, well, our students have done this, this, this and this. When you get to parents evening and you sort of, the parents are like, so what's my kid learning? And you're like, well, they've done some research and then do it and things. So you can't really account exactly for what the work through discovery learning can you through using technology.
With the guided discovery learning though, it does tell you that like the 3 steps that I had earlier, there was like you need to make sure the students know what the end result is, so you are still giving them a task to do, but you're letting them do it in their own way. So they still have like, it's kind of like our stats class at the end of last year, like it'd be like you need to have done this by the end of the session, but we're not going to sit here and tell you everything you need to do and all the skills you need to do it, because then the students aren't really learning. Yeah, they'll still have aims for the end of the lesson of things they should have done, but they do it in their own way, instead of the teacher just being like, well, now you go on Excel and now you type in this code and this creates this, and now you drag this over here and you put this in here and it makes a graph. Whereas like the students should figure it out more on their own.
Different levels in progress, because obviously some kids will get there straight away and some kids literally could be sat there for hours and completely
Yeah.
give them more instruction.
Yeah, they would obviously, like I said earlier, the support depends on the children, like each child, so there will be the odd people in the class who are no good. There's always some people that are just no good with technology. Yeah, they will need like obviously a lot more support and guidance and stuff. But yeah, cool.